So Jonathan comes with over 9 years of executive search experience in the Asia Pacific region. He advises clients from several industry sectors, including tech, industrial and life sciences. He's really familiar with aviation, logistics, shipping, chemicals, maritime, engineering, industrial automation, and manufacturing companies. He also covers life sciences from pharmaceuticals to medical technology and is familiar in hiring leadership positions for MNCs, PE, portfolio companies, local conglomerates, and startups. He is a core member of the Global Industrial Markets Practice and Financial Officers Practice. Originally from the United States, Jonathan bridges the gap between the West and East and brings in an in-depth understanding of top team talent and what looks good from a regional to global perspective. Now, before joining KORNFERRY, he spent 2 years with another international executive search firm and 3 years with another firm starting up the executive search practice for the region. Must be so exciting doing that. I feel so excited even reading it. Mr. Loh holds a Bachelor of Science in Finance. Wow, not easy. From San Jose State University. He's fluent in English and conversant in local dialects. He's based in Singapore with family in Singapore, Malaysia, and the United States. Yay, so wonderful. Now joining him, I call both of them the dynamic duo. I've also told the audience that I was so privileged to hear you two, get so animated responding to questions, and I was just visualizing you being in a workforce seminar, webinar like this, and here you are. Woohoo! Dreams can come true. Okay, Eugene. So Eugene is the current talent acquisition manager for APAC in GARTNER, a world-leading information technology research and advisory company. He has been with the company for 4 years and have held roles in both talent acquisition and employee engagement. Now, I thought that's a very interesting combination. Maybe you can tell us more about that later. Prior to GARTNER, Eugene has extensive experience in people-centric businesses. He was associate director at Fraser Jones and senior consultant at Michael Page, both well-known search firms. Earlier in his career, he was the relationship manager at Citi. Wow. Eugene holds a Bachelor of Commerce in Econs and Finance from the RMIT University. Now, today, they are going to have a fire chat with us on this topic in partnership with Recruiters Network in short. Okay, so over to you, Jonathan.
Thank you, everyone, for having both Eugene and myself today. Just also another background, Eugene and I have been colleagues before. So I definitely can vouch for Eugene's experience. He's actually worked on both I would say the agency side and internal as well, meaning that he's worked for external recruitment companies and for an internal team. So he brings a very well-rounded perspective, whereas my experience has been mainly agency, and I come from more of an executive search background, meaning that most of the level of roles that I aim to fulfill are director to VP, C-suite board level roles. So I can definitely talk to you guys more about that if you have specific questions about exec search work in general. But nonetheless, happy to push over to Eugene to say a few opening words as well.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Jonathan. Yeah, very nice to meet all of you. And as Jonathan said, yes, we have worked together, and so I can also attest to his capabilities within a search industry. What I cannot attest to is his dialect speaking capability. So
you mean you don't understand?
That was a bit of an embellishment, I admit. Yeah.
No, but I mean, he's a great guy and he's really good at what he does. So, I'm definitely very happy to be here to be able to, have this fireside chat with everyone. So, maybe one thing to kind of address at the forefront here, Eileen, you mentioned earlier around employee engagement. So my day job really is talent acquisition. So I lead a team here of 5 across the region. Employee engagement is really, something that I do by the side for the organization. Like I would say that's my night job. And it's something that really landed upon me. It's basically people who are in the employee engagement committee in GARTNER, people who are holding roles within different verticals. We come together just to think about how we can better build the culture, how we can further engage with employees and make them feel more, more at home in the organization. Yep. So just some background around that.
I keep hearing from recruiters that there's really a shortage of talent. Is this just hearsay, or is this what you are experiencing as well?
No, that's a really good question. I mean, if you really think about how the talent market has actually evolved in the last 2 years, right? Since 2021, right? Since after coming out from the pandemic, right? In 2020 was a time where we were not, hiring was almost at a halt. There was very little hiring. Organizations were very conservative in wanting to spend money and bring additional headcount. And people were also very conservative in wanting to explore opportunities that they didn't know, right? There was a huge risk factor. So they were more willing to stay where they are with the status quo rather than look at opportunities, right? So when 2021 came around, which was last year, then it exploded, because then people got used to the fact that pandemic is here to stay, and that we need to still, business still needs to carry on. And we saw an explosion of the number of positions that were hired. So I did a comparison based on the number of jobs that were available, that organizations were hiring in February of 2021. Okay, compared to 2020 February, there was a 30% increase in the number of jobs, right? Posted on Indeed. So it was, what that means is that there are 30% more jobs in the market pre-pandemic compared to the pre-pandemic. So that's how much we've more than recovered. And when that happens, it triggers off what we know as the great, great shuffle, the great resignation, because the market is open, people are starting to be more open, and therefore people change jobs.
Wow, very encouraging. So basically what it means is job seekers have choices, perhaps? I don't know.
Yes, 100%, right? So that was in 2021, right? That's where we saw a spike in attrition, but at the same time, people were, were actually, there were a lot of jobs in the market, all right? But the perceived factor is because there is more jobs in the market, there are lesser candidates, therefore, people say that there is a shortage of talent in the market, right?
I see.
So that was for 2021. In 2022, we've come to the next iteration because so many people has made the move last year, right?
Correct.
When you come to this year, although it kind of normalized already the number of roles in the market, but because so many people have made the move last year, less people are willing to make the move this year. So that's what I've seen on a macro level, not going down to specifics of whether it's a tech role or whether it's a sales role, etc.
Okay. Jonathan, you see the same?
I think Eugene had provided some pretty good insight in that sense, but I mean, I guess I can also talk about the aspect that we did have a lot of foreign talent leaving, especially, because from exec search perspective, a lot of the senior postings are held by, a lot of MNCs, they have parachuted or flew in expats from Australia, from US, from Europe, for example, or other parts of the region in China. And they've all gone back to their countries because of the heavy restrictions that were in Singapore. So now that Singapore is opening up again, there is a demand for, hey, we still need leadership positions to lead our companies out of the pandemic levels to reach back into profitable margins and so on and so forth. So in actual offense, it's very similar that there is a higher demand for this kind of talent, but now that there's a shortage in the market one can argue it's a good thing. We can look at local talent to then fill in senior positions. But the question remains, are local talent ready and wanting to be qualified for these positions, which is another topic altogether. But I think there's definitely movement, and there is supply, but I think for our clients, what we need to do is not only provide who is here in Singapore, but who is in the region, who can come in. Maybe there's Singaporeans overseas, diaspora, that can come back to Singapore to work now. Yeah.
Is career gap going to be an issue there? Do you emphasize more on experience or recency? Jonathan, just a follow-on question from there.
So just to understand your question, you're asking is it do we hire or
Yeah,
look for talent? Yeah.
because earlier on you were saying that if you were looking at the talent, not
Mhm.
just within Singapore, but are there returning Singaporeans
Mhm.
or Singaporeans currently working overseas? So I was just thinking about some professionals in our midst I've come across them that they have worked overseas before, but
Mhm.
because of the pandemic, they came back and then for a period of time, they had a break, so-called career break. Does
Right.
that matter? Or, but in terms of experience, they've got all the relevant experience.
Right.
It's just a gap that could be a stigma. I don't know.
Right. No,
Yeah.
you're absolutely, look, that's always the case. I mean, when
Mm,
clients do come out and talk to exec search firm, they're
right.
always expecting somebody who is perfect on paper, and it's us
Yes,
to
of
educate
course,
the
right?
client that that's not always the case, and we need to
Yeah.
look at talent. Maybe there's a sabbatical or a hiatus, or for some reason someone had to take a break to take care of someone in the family. A lot of
Right.
execs have aging parents, for example. A lot of them will come back to Singapore because of that very reason. So it's us about telling the client, hey, look, this person has all the experience, and that counts. Experience is very important. But there is also that recency bias, as you mentioned. What has this person done lately, although they have taken this hiatus? So it is incumbent upon the candidate to then explain to us, I've kept myself busy for doing this, doing that,
Lovely.
whatever. And even if the candidate hasn't done very much, you got to come up with something
You
to
got it,
tell the
right?
story.
I
You have to.
love the
Yeah.
advice. I simply
Yeah.
love the advice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So explaining what you do in the meantime, keeping yourself updated, and then just so you don't lose touch, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Whether it be a remedial course in learning something new, using your SG Futures credit, for example, to then exercise something, or even helping out with a family business, charity work. At least it tells the client that this person hasn't lost touch and is still active and rooting for his next career move.
Okay.
And doing something.
I really like that.
Yeah.
How long is, how acceptable? How long is acceptable? Because I know for a fact that some would actually text and ask me, I've been out of touch for like 5 years. And so, is that good or is that bad, or maybe I shouldn't even try? What is acceptable?
So obviously, you remember we are also competing against other people who have remained in the market or have been out of the market for just lesser time. So a year versus, let's say, a year versus 2 years, maybe not so bad. Versus someone who has been in 5 years, it's a harder sell, obviously. But depending on that person's experience and what they have done, and a lot of folks have done consulting work in the meantime. Is there any strategic projects that you've done, any initiatives that you have done in the meantime and advised on? I mean, no matter what, you got to try to find ways to make yourself attractive. And even if you haven't, it's okay to be honest, but you also have to perhaps your expectations has to be tempered. You may have to start back a few steps backwards in order to get back to where you are again. So for example, if you are finance director for the region for some time, but you were on a 5-year break, you did some strategic projects, consulted here and there for family businesses or whatever, you may need to start at a senior manager position or associate director position again, just to get back to where you are, and maybe in a different industry that needs your help, maybe SME that likes your, let's say, MNC or broader experience, but cannot afford you at the level you were before or give you something. So it's all about, you can enter the market, but also adjusting your expectations at the same time. If it was someone out of the market for, let's say, 5 years, for example.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. In fact, someone asked, Jennifer asked, what about volunteering? Even if, it does that count?
I mean that's a very good question. So I actually have a recent example where I was part of an interview panel where a candidate had left the previous organization in around September, October of 2019. I'm just trying to remember the dates, 2019, right? And it was I think close to the point where we were just getting into the start of COVID, right? Where where that was the case. And I think it was a scaling down of hiring in general. So what happened was he got the job elsewhere, but before he could join the other company, the company rescinded the offer because of the whole pandemic situation, right? Towards the end of 2019. And so he did want to go back into the workforce, but unfortunately, there was just not many available opportunities at that point in time. So what he did was, try the life throw him lemonade. He made lemons. He made lemonade, right? And so what he did was he just volunteered, right? He went out to help with volunteering, like giving out food to the impacted construction workers, right? He took up a course to learn how to administer I think vaccines as well, because he had to learn how to use the needle. So I mean, like he just made the best of what he could at that point in time, and that was completely nothing to do with his job, right? He's a sales executive, fairly senior one, right? But he decided, hey, I mean, like, I can't change my situation. I can't change the market at this point in time. But what I can do is do good. I can learn something. I can pick up things that might, help me learn something different, or might bring me a new perspective, or just help me appreciate the reality of having a job. So I think he learned all that, and so he brought that all into the conversation. I mean, when we spoke to him, obviously we asked him, so why was there a gap? Because the realities we want to know. Were we open to that? We are open. But if he was able to bring a story to share what he did with the best of his time, what he learned, and how having gone through that, it makes him a better individual, a stronger individual, more tenacious one, more appreciative one for the role that he could take on in the future. So I think all that really, made us sit up and like, wow, that's a story, right? And it's not something that really everybody goes through. And some people going through the same thing might react differently, right? So I think it talks about his mindset.
So would you prefer to see an explanation of the career break on the CV, or wait to be told the reason when you ask them, like not have that stated in the CV?
I think it's good to just put it down to say, like, broadly, without having to go to much specifics, right? Just say like, I focus in volunteering, or like took up certain courses, and then have at least you kind of prompt the interviewer to ask a question, right? Because interviewers, good ones, right, are inquisitive, and they do want to find out, right, and do their forensics work, right, to find out what happened during that time. And so giving a little bit of a hint there also adds a prompt that they will ask a question or not, you remember to actually share as well.
Okay, wonderful. I am also just curious, just a quick question. Are you aware that LinkedIn now has a feature to allow, things like career breaks to be included in the profile? It's just been introduced by LinkedIn. So I think there are professionals who are concerned whether they should be putting in there or not. But I think my general take is always to put it in there, because if you've got nothing bad to talk about, then you all the more you should. If you have not thought of something to say, it's about time you think of something to say.
Agreed.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. I just want to share the question on menti.com, and I think for everyone who just joined as well, please go to menti.com. That's the code here, 45756886. And then enter your question there. Please upvote, if you find that the question is something that you want to ask as well. Yay. So I'm going to ask this question to Jonathan. Are the commissions different? Recruiting firms have the same? And are there any recruiter firms that work smarter, harder, with higher success rates to get first job seekers for the job? Job seekers for the job. Wow.
Okay.
I don't know.
Interesting.
Interesting, yeah.
So there's two questions here, right?
Yep.
So let's tackle the first one first. Are the commissions different for recruiting? Are the commissions different for recruiting firms the same? So, I mean, it differs, right? So, for instance, broadly speaking, Eugene and I used to work at Michael Page, so that's a contingent firm. Versus now I work for KORNFERRY, which is more of a retained search firm. So what's the difference? Contingent is what you call success only. So success only is you don't pay anything now. You sign a contract that I am your vendor, and here are the terms of our agreement. If you were to place someone that I have presented as a recruiter into your organization, then that's where you pay me X amount of money, maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Eugene, and feel free to chime in, maybe let's say 25% of the, the bonus, the cash structure of the place, candidate's salary. So let's say candidate is 100,000 Singapore dollars a year. That's $25,000 that I collect as a recruiter. Now, it's a bit different for retained firms because generally speaking, you come to a retained recruitment firm when there is a, let's just say strategic hiring need. Maybe it's a high profile role. You need to explain to the board directors that you've sought professional help outside for unbiased to give you the right assessments. Then you would consider doing an exec search firm that we charge usually about 33%, 1/3. So we are more expensive, but what you get in return is you work solely with us, kind of like on a one-to-one bespoke basis where we tailor the process for you and give you a lot of very in-depth mapping. So you do get, you have to pay for certain services. So it is different for the firms. I hope that kind of clears up about the first question. But in generally speaking, the ranges are from, some firms will only charge 22%. Those are probably the quick fast one.
Right? That seems to
I'm not sure, but for exec search firms, at least, we are definitely around the 1/3, 33% of the, and sometimes we also charge in the LTI, and it depends on the agreement and the terms of the agreement as well. So,
right. Very nice.
I mean, regarding the rate, the percentages of rates, I mean, it's been a while since I was in the agency space, right? But I remember it being around the 25% as the average. In some cases where roles, depending on the roles, it could go up to 30%, where it's, tougher searches, could go up to those levels. But I guess to the question that was being asked as well, so are there firms that work smarter, harder with higher success rates? I mean, the reality with recruiting firms as well, I mean, having been on both sides, right? The agency as well as the in-house, right? With agency, at the end of the day, they are looking at like firms, like firms, for example, if I were to work with a recruiting agency, right?
Right.
Firms would be paying a recruiting agency for a specific role for a specific reason, right? The reason could be we are unable to find the talents ourselves, right? We are, maybe it's a confidential search for whatever reason, right? And so when you are thinking about us, an organization, having to pay a recruiting agency to do something that they can't do themselves, sometimes the expectations could be higher, right? So if there is a JD, a role, and they are looking for somebody that fits the bill, like almost to a T, right? So that's the psychology behind it. And sometimes as a candidate, I know it can be frustrating. You go into these recruiting agencies, why don't they, respond? Why don't they represent me? Potentially that's the case. I mean, unfortunately, it's the reality of why they are being employed and why they are being paid a fee.
Right.
Are there firms that may help you? I know that there are firms such as, I've heard of like Maximus, where their comp structure is very different. I think, Eileen, you should be quite familiar with Maximus, I think.
Yeah, we've appointed by Workforce, yes.
Right. So I mean, as far as I know that they operate in a slightly different scheme, and so they have a stronger vested interest, to help the candidates to find a role. Whereas you'll find, especially with some agencies, the more usual recruiting agencies, they tend to be more client focused because the clients would have certain demands.
Yeah. So absolutely. I think that's appointed by the government to help the candidates that the government basically funnel to them. So they work for the interests of the candidates. So for those who are interested in that, then probably have to reach out to recruiters such as this. But I would say still few and far between, because most of the recruiters actually work more for the employers who have the current position itself. So it's pretty much like the real estate, I would say. Okay, thanks for that. The next question is, okay, we were advised to personalize our resumes to be tailored or customized to a specific role and job scope. should we submit more than one resume to the recruiter? Ooh. Would you like to receive like multiple resumes from one candidate? Eugene?
Yeah, I know that's an interesting question. I mean,
Yeah.
I think the reality, the answer is no.
Yeah.
I think it's quite. I mean, it will build a lot of inconsistency and maybe a little bit of confusion, right? So the way that you want to go about it probably is send one CV across, right? And of course, because you're sending a CV for a specific role, hopefully you should tailor that for that role that you're applying for. And when you get a chance to get on a conversation with a recruiter, for example, you can then get feedback and say, apart from this specific role that you're hiring for, do you see any other roles in the organization that may be suitable for my profile and my experience, right? And when they say, yeah, actually, as a matter of fact, maybe you've applied for a sales role, but maybe there is a customer success role that could also be interesting, then the recruiter would tell you accordingly, and then you can say, would you like me to amend my CV to reflect the more relevant aspects of my experience? Then it will make complete sense, right? So that's my advice.
Yeah. Jonathan, your views? Usually
Yeah.
there's only one, right?
Yeah, Eugene put it very well. Usually you should be one, otherwise it does create confusion. But I think I'll take a step back and say, if I were to send out one resume, right, as a job seeker, what would that look like? And many times when we do receive CVs that I do advise candidates to please go and revise, it's because they emphasize too much on their responsibilities. This is what I do from a day-to-day perspective. What I'm looking for and what recruiters looking for, what are your achievements?
Yeah.
In fact, I'd rather just you have 1 or 2 lines on your responsibility. I kind of got a feel for what you do. Now give me the achievements. What are the initiatives that you spearheaded? How big was your team? What kind of transformation did you do? What have you done to change the business and leave the campsite a better site for the next person coming on board? So I think that's a more powerful statement across the board. And that allows me to, okay, this person has done this work, come with this customer experience, go to market strategy, for example. Then that also allows me to broadly think, okay, maybe this doesn't work for this role, but because he had that achievement, then I can think about him for a commercial excellence role, for example. It may not be the pure sales role that he or she is wanting to apply for. Have you thought about then doing a customer experience journey than etc., right? Where we just look at the P&L numbers you generated. So I think that's the advice I would give. Just come up with one, emphasize more of the achievements, less on the responsibilities. Yeah.
Yep. I agree with you. So do not confuse the hiring organization unless you know someone personally, then you can verbally inform the other person, but don't submit 3, always submit 1 and have the 2 other versions ready.
Yeah, if there is going to be more than 2 versions, you can have a long CV that's detailed, but you can have an abridged one as well, maybe if you want to do that. That's just the only differences I would kind of go at.
When we submit our application to recruitment agencies through various job portal, do our applications really reach the employers and agencies, or agencies decide it? I think I know the answer to this one. When they submit your application to middlemen, intermediaries. Yep. So
it'll be harder for me to answer that, Aline, because just for everyone here to know, for exec search firms, we generally do not go to these websites to seek for profiles. We tend to do a more direct approach methodology, meaning that, and the truth is, I tend to go for people who are not looking for jobs, who are already enrolled. So maybe Eugene, you can speak a little bit more about this.
Yeah, no, I mean, in the reality with this is if you're gonna send it through a middleman, and the reality is that they're gonna actually decide who they're gonna represent to the hiring manager. Because if you put it in the perspective, same as what I mentioned earlier, the client is gonna be paying a fee to them to potentially help them do some of the legwork, right? And which means that they would expect the agency to sift through the profiles and candidates, right? Having potentially done a first round screening before they proceed anybody through the process. So that what ends up on my end is 4 to 5 maybe created profiles as opposed to 100 applicants, right? then I would have rather done it myself, right? There's no point in paying an agency.
That's true. Yep. So please remember that one for sure. Okay. What happens behind the scenes after the application goes through in terms of how recruiters work with employers? Do they have cadence meeting? Is there a structured process? I reckon they should have. Yeah.
Yes. I'll go first on this one. I mean, definitely when it comes to a retained search basis, we have to have a process. We have to have expectations, right? So what's the timeline that we need? What's the cadence? We have weekly calls, for example, or bi-monthly calls, right? Every 2 weeks or so. And, so what happens behind the scenes? So let's just break it down very quickly. What I can give in a snapshot is we would have a discovery session, right? What is the immediate need? Talk about the job description, then the must-haves for the role, the nice-to-haves, right? What are the key requirements? What are we looking for? What's the burning platform that we need to have people on board to help fix or whatnot? And then we will then come up, okay, we need to have a short list, let's say within 3 weeks, meaning that the agency needs to already have talked to a number of people. Maybe we target 30, 40 people, a very direct approach at the senior levels. And then we water it down to 20 that we end up going for a second round with us. And then by the end of it, they only want 5 profiles from us. And then we go through, subsequent scheduling of who are the stakeholders that this person needs to meet, whether it's the board, whether it's any executive management, peer group that they'll be working with. And then, of course, to the offer process. So that typically takes somewhere around, let's say 2 months is very, very fast at the executive search level. 3 months is even considered good, but it can go up to even 6 months. I've seen things gone through a year. So the structure needs to be there to kind of say, hey, here's where we are, and here's where we're going to go next. Yeah. Eugene? Yeah.
Yep. So thanks for sharing, from a exec search perspective, retained search. From a contingent search, it would be a kickoff conversation to really understand what are the hiring requirements from the organization, from the clients, and then subsequently, usually, different recruiting firms have different turnaround times, right? So some of them can turn around within 48 hours. Some of them would turn around maybe within a week. So depending on agencies, they have different turnaround times. So, but I would say at the very least, there will be weekly cadence conversations, updates on the progress, on candidates that have met in the process, realignment on what good looks like, especially after the hiring manager has actually met the candidates, right, in the process, to make sure that they can recalibrate if necessary, and then kind of rinse and repeat and do that again, right, until they actually identify the right person.
Can I just say that when the candidates don't hear back from the recruiter, it's actually a no, right? I mean, kind of after you've met with the employer organization already, and it's been let's say 3 days.
Well,
it's not looking good, right?
I wouldn't go so far to say that it's a no.
Or it's not looking
based on that. I mean, 3 days I think is still a reasonable time frame. Of course, like I say, I can't. The reality, I can't speak for every recruiter, because there are the good ones like Jonathan, but then there may be others that are not as prompt and not as service oriented. You will see that in it's a mixed bag, right? Of talents in the market. That's a reality. So some may be very prompt, respond after your interview. Immediately they are already calling you, immediately are texting you, immediately they're how's the interview going? They're giving you feedback within the next 24 hours. There will be, but sometimes hiring managers may not even respond directly to the recruiter as well, right? So then I would say give a little bit of lead time, because some hiring managers are extremely busy, packed up, days or if not weeks in advance. So give them some time. If you drop if your modus operandi is actually to drop a WhatsApp message and they don't respond, give them a day and then follow up with another message. If it's through email, you can do the same as well, and just see how they respond.
They might come across as annoying. I think
just pleasantly, not not just like, oh hi, how's the progress so far? Let me know if you hear anything, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of leave it in a more pleasant manner rather than be hounding them every hour. Obviously we've seen some of those as well, and yeah, I agree, Eileen, that can be quite overwhelming for
right?
a recruiting consultant. But yeah, I mean, I think not every day, but one day after your interview, you don't hear anything, then maybe give it another 3 to 4 days, if not, a week. I mean, I'm sure they will at least give you some response
Right,
or a
right.
timeline. Yeah.
I always think that, right after the interview, the hiring manager would have already formed some opinion already,
Potentially,
and
or they could be meeting a few people and making a decision as well sometimes.
yeah, of course, granted, yes, granted. But and then another mantra I have is, you've got my contact, you know how to get me. I don't need to chase you if you really want me. in
That's
that
true.
sense, yeah. Okay. Oh, okay. This is, just bear with us as we ask this question. But seriously, how significant is age in the talent acquisition process? Is there a cutoff age? I think for Jonathan, I know his answer, right? Because I don't know. Maybe age is something he's looking for because it comes with years of experience. I don't know. For the level that you're hiring.
Yeah. Well, there are some very excellent candidates that are quite young, that maybe they're in their 30s, for example, mid 30s.
Right.
I mean, who have just maybe work in an investment bank. They've done good work for a small family business, turned around an turn around an IPO.
True, yeah.
So those guys, I mean, it's a wide range, right? So just the answer is, how significant is age? I mean, it definitely plays a part. And the concern with a lot of clients is, what's this person's runway? If we were to hire said person, is that person going to retire tomorrow? That's the thing. So that's always a concern. And our job as a recruiter is to tell the client, look, this person, it will be able to provide the runway beyond what you think, and actually has, usually it's about the energy, the years of experience. This person can add this type of experience in this capacity. So we do not ever discriminate by age, but in the sense that we still need to give the client, if they want something, we give them kind of what they want. But then, hey, as long as let's say we have 4 or 5 good profiles within whatever desired age range they want. But then we say that gives us the leeway to say, look, here are some other ones that are, maybe much more closer to a retirement age that you really want to consider. And maybe not for this. They come in as an advisor, it could be for an advisor or another role, maybe board level position.
Board level.
Especially that person has some experience in that capacity already. So again, it plays a part. There's no cutoff age, but obviously there's that's just the nature of some clients. They're just going to be biased. It's our job to then tell them, no, please have an open mind. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Can I move on that? I mean, but please chime in if Eugene, you've got something you want to. Do recruiters keep their clients' identity a secret? Yeah, I would think so, if it is a closed search, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can draw back on my experiences as well, being actually both sides as well. I can share reality, right? Is that when I was in agency as well, when there were times I was working with certain clients, and there was a reason why they can't share that, because there was a person in their team that was just simply not working out, unfortunately, right? Or maybe there is a person on the team who is moving, but it's not publicly known yet, right? And they don't want to shake the boat, right? Rock the boat before that is known, and they can't afford to not have somebody fill in that position and having it open for extended periods of time. So in those cases, that's what we call a confidential search, right? Where the client would be telling the recruiter that you know who I am, but you can't be telling the candidates who I am until you've assessed them to be suitable, until I've seen that curated list, and until I want to see them. Then you can tell the candidate who I am and who the organization is.
Would you be offended if I were to ask you, do you have the mandate to do this search with the client? Because I mean, there are recruiters who, you know, see an advert and then dog eat dog world, right? They might
Right.
just search for candidate and then try and surface to the client or something like that.
I mean, personally, as a recruiter, I wouldn't be. I
You
would
wouldn't be
just. I
now.
mean, I understand the realities of the market, and I think for a candidate to actually ask that, I think you are very savvy and very discerning. So I'll be quite intrigued as to your. I
Wow, how
guess
come
the
you can ask
reason.
me this question?
Yeah, the reason why you're asking me that, right? Well, how do you know that? And then I'll say, yeah,
Recruiter
actually, no, that's a
before?
really good question. I say that's a really good question. But the reality, yes, I know there are some people like that in the
There's
market
an
who are.
audience here who say that's him, Ernest. Oops.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
then I'll say, yeah, don't worry. I mean, I'm definitely working with this client, and so don't worry. I mean, I definitely do have the mandate. Right.
Yeah.
That's the way I would approach it. But Jonathan, being of course still in the market, maybe he has a different approach.
Everything is hush hush with Jonathan, right?
No, not at all, not at all. But no, I think it's true. I mean, especially the executive level, it's only. I mean, sometimes it's an open position. It's a well-known thing. It's publicly
Right.
traded company. This person is leaving, for example. Then it's not confidential in that sense. We're happy to share, but it's a lot of times it is like Eugene mentioned. You're replacing an incumbent that's not performing. The rest of the team doesn't know that this person is getting replaced because of bad behavior, for example. So it needs to be a very short list of people who are in the know. And then we would even so far as to send you an NDA to sign, so as not to release the name of the organization. But we always are aware as recruiters, it's a sell job as well. As much as the candidate is attracted to the role, we need to also sell it to the candidate. So they need to know who the company is eventually, especially at exec search level. Yeah. But
like
also because
NDA
we're a retained firm. We work exclusive. You only usually work exclusively, an employer works exclusively with us. We usually have no qualm sharing because we're not competing against any other agency in that sense. We have the mandate. So we're more open to share, I would say, than maybe a contingent firm if it's multiple vendors working for one client, for example. Yeah.
Yeah, he's in a good place, so he can say that, right, Jonathan?
Yeah.
Yes. How should candidate find out about the range of salary the client has for the role, and who to negotiate salary with? Is it recruiter or with the ultimate employer?
Okay.
You want to take this, Jonathan? Or?
I do.
Yeah.
So let me quickly answer the second part of this question quickly. Who do you negotiate salary with? So I think first and foremost, is it actually an advantage to you to go through a recruiter when it comes to salary? Because we negotiate on your behalf. You don't have to negotiate directly with the client, and that can sometimes lead to a lot of friction, let's just say, right? And we can mediate the process. So that's the good thing about using a recruiter like us. And we're also, I mean, more or less, incentivized, of course, to get you the best salary, because that means our commissions are higher in general, unless there's a cap, right? So we are on your side in that sense, but we also need to do well for our client. And, ultimately, there needs to be a good matching of expectations from both sides. Now, if I was a candidate and I want to find out, what is the salary range that is paying? Of course, there's always a range the client has, but I can tell you from exec search practice that if the candidate is really good and maybe over the budget, we will try to convince the client, hey, look, you may want to stretch your budget for this type of person, this flexibility. But when it's maybe a role that is not within a certain band, right? That's maybe not exact level, then it becomes a bit harder because we need to work within that band and that expectation. So how to find that out? I mean, us recruiters are very hush-hush about it, because at the end of the day, what we don't want is give you a number and then you have that number in your mind. And then, if you don't get that number, you're not interested in the role as well. So typically, we need to go by, we usually negotiate up to, 15, maybe a 30% increase at exec level in terms of salary. I've seen more, but those are very atypical. So in a way, when a recruiter comes to you, you kind of want to know the range in which you can command. You look at the role, you get a sense for it. I can expect to get between 15 to 25, maybe 30% at most, right?
Right.
from there. So, but if you want to know the range, I think you can try doing a lot of research online. As a recruiter, for me, what I try to do is give you kind of like, look, give you indication without actually saying it. You're probably, like I would say to someone, you're probably at the upper end of what they can afford. You know, more or less, just to give you an idea. Then you know, going into this process,
yeah,
you're probably not going to
almost
be able to get
reaching the
30%.
live wire. Just don't touch
Correct.
it.
Correct. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I hope that helps. But you know, we need to do well for the client and we do well for the candidate. But ultimately, we're on your side to make sure you get the best you know, package you can possible. Yeah.
I was always under the impression that the agency was on my side since now I know. Jordan has spilled the beans.
Yes, yes, he has.
I'm happy to share that though. Yeah, you should know. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's the other question. Do recruiters actively look for candidates before even, you know, making a position available publicly? Maybe more for Eugene, and how to be more visible to the likes of you.
Yeah, so I just want to qualify the question. So this is also in the context of recruiting agencies, is it?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if I was thinking in the perspective of a recruiting consultant, they would use a multi-pronged approach, right? They would of course use different channels. So one of the channels, of course, they will put out an advertisement on different job boards, right? Be it like JobStreet or even LinkedIn, to try to get candidates to apply. And this would usually be your active candidates. At the same time as well, then they will be using other channels and other methods. So using you know, LinkedIn as well to search for passive candidates, right? Using, you know, Boolean searches, keyword searches, and then from there they would be able to get the best pool of candidates, both active, both passive, so that they have a higher chance and opportunity to be able to find the right candidate and best profile for the client. So yeah, they would definitely do two approaches.
I hear the words LinkedIn a lot. So, you know, do get yourself a record on LinkedIn, at least you're searchable, or I always say, at least you exist in cyberspace. At least cyberspace has your name and not someone else.
Yes.
Yeah, it's critical. It's critical.
Yeah.
Yes.
I actually saw this question in the chat and I thought it's so apt. How do we then work with a recruiter? In fact, how to find the recruiter and how to contact them? So basic question.
I'm very happy to respond to this, Jonathan, and then you can fill in.
Please. Yeah.
So because of course, this is a very key question that you know,
Yeah.
friends would ask as well, right? I mean, knowing that you know you're in that space, and I think it's about, first of all, understanding what role you are looking for, right? And then finding out which recruiting agencies actually hire for that position. Because if you think about the way recruiting agencies work, is that not every recruiting agency hires for all roles.
Right.
So if, say, for example, you're looking for a supply chain role, right? Not every agency can look for supply chain professionals. So you need to find an agency that actually has that function and capability to actually find that, because most of the time recruiting agencies are quite specialized for the vertical or the specialization that they're actually hiring for, right? So find out what that is, do your own research, and then start looking out for how you can contact them, whether it's going on you know, on websites, right, to Google for the name of the organizations, and then look out for, if you go to like the landing page for that firm, you should be able to get to the right person, usually, right? That's one. The second is that you should also go on LinkedIn to then try to find people that are recruiting specifically for that function and connect with them, drop them a liner, send them your CV with contacts, and then, you know, try to get a conversation, right? Ultimately, you want to get on a call with you, right? So like Eileen mentioned, you know, it's persistence is different from being overly annoyance, if I can say, right?
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
So you know, trying to get on a conversation, and then in that conversation, hopefully you can bring yourself to life, and then you can, you know, help them see why you are a good candidate and they should represent you for opportunities that they may have on hand or they may have in the future.
Okay. Wonderful. In fact, this question also came up when someone has, is something to do with salary. When someone had, okay, this question is posted to me in private. I don't know, maybe it's by mistake in private, I meant. So the question is, if I took a pay cut in my previous role, and then, you know, applying to my next role, the recruiter asked me for my last drawn salary. Shouldn't I share my previously last drawn rather than the last drawn, prior to the last drawn?
Okay,
Would you like that or not?
I can answer that. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, it's good to know you took a pay cut. And for me, I always ask, yeah, what is then I mean, it depends on the last role you did and what you're currently doing now, right? So let's say the person was a CFO before. I know I'm using very big titles here, but just for example, right? Yeah. So this person's a CFO now, but, you know, for circumstances, you know, they had to take a pay cut and they're working a finance director role currently. So, you know, and let's say it's an MNC they work for now, there's the SME they work for, they took a pay cut because the SME cannot afford the MNC to pay an MNC rate. And then now it's an MNC I'm hiring for, right? It's the client, whatever, you know, listed on the XGX. Of course, then I'd be interested, okay, what was that CFO job for the MNC that you're getting paid for? Because that's relevant, right? And as a good recruiter, of course, we will look at both. And we also need to know the reason why you got your pay cut. But ultimately, you need to disclose both. It's not that I just want the number I had before, and that's what I'm going to tell the recruiter. Because end of the day, they're going to, sometimes companies, they will ask you for your pay slips. They'll ask you for the information. And the worst thing that can happen is you tell the recruiter some numbers, and then
the payslip shows something.
The payslip shows up, or your worksheet you fill out and it's completely different, right? Then we have an issue. Then there's we got some explaining why is it that this, and we had this recently happen. You know, the person.
No way.
Yeah, well, in this case, it was a discussion with a candidate in Thailand who put his number as he's saying it's net, but the client thought it was gross, right? The small things like that, and it mucks up the whole process. And the person ended up. The client said, I don't trust this person and we don't want to deal with them anymore. And even though he was perfect on paper, they like him as well, the interviews, that whole trust was ruined. So I guess, what I'm trying to say is please tell both and trust the recruiter that, again, we want to get you the best package as possible, as well as do right by the client. So make sure you report all numbers, in previous and current role if asked.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Are we okay? Can we just spend a few more minutes? I'm just mindful of time. Because let's just can we just take like one more question? Okay, let me just do recruiters from agencies use ATS resume checker to filter out resumes too? Maybe I can ask Eugene. Do you do that?
For Gartner, we don't.
Okay, yeah. Good to know.
We don't, right? But then, I mean, I think agency, I think some of them do. As far as I think some of them are using certain technologies to reduce the workload for filtering. So I think that is the reality. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm sure, Jonathan, I don't think, because you don't even advertise. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't do that. It's more of a direct approach that we have here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Normally, yeah, it's used when there's really high volume sort of application. I think that really helps to sieve out. Yeah.
Right. Okay. To be proactive, I would like to approach various recruiters. Whoa. So should I send a detailed CV since it's not for a particular role? Because it's really, really tough, yeah? Does that make sense? What do you think? It's a bit too generic. If you want to approach a recruiter.
I mean, my personal take is there is nothing wrong in networking, right? With recruiters, even if there is no specific role at this point in time, it doesn't mean that there will not be a role that would, open up in the next few weeks or next few months. So I remember when I was in agency, I'm not just meeting candidates for existing roles, but I'll be meeting candidates for, I mean, if they have an interesting experience, right? That's one. If they come across as an interesting person, right?
What is
We're all,
interesting? Tell me.
I don't know. I guess like if they come across as somebody that you want to spend time with, right? At the end of the day, right? Somebody that you think, yeah, I may not have a role now, but the person has a story to tell, right? Or has something interesting on their experience, or the way that they approach is in a way where it catches your attention. I don't have an example right now that I can share.
Right.
It's
But
been a while.
stand out. What you're implying is something stands out about the CV. Something about the CV stands out to you, right? Like
Yeah, I mean, I can share with you an example. Like, I mean, this is when I'm in-house, right? So there was a specific, a specific candidate who was in the process for a role, and he actually had a not so great experience with one of our recruiters, and obviously I got on a call. It wasn't my team, but it was for another recruiter. But so I got on a call, I spoke to the person, and initially I just really wanted to hear his grievance because he reached out to me, although it was not direct relationship. And I could have just very easily kind of brushed it off and say, hey, really sorry for that. We'll do better the next time. And but I actually say, hey, I thought he was interesting on the call, and I said, let's meet up. I'll be interested to actually speak to you and hear more about your experience, and maybe if I have an opening on my team in the future, I might actually consider this person. So that was the way. That was I guess an example, right, where I had not planned to have a conversation or meet this person, but just through speaking, get on a call, I felt a little bit more compelled.
Okay, that sounds interesting. And the next one is, how do we convince a recruiter to represent a candidate who is able to meet 70 to 80% of the job requirements? In other words, what do they have to do to convince the recruiter on their plans to complete or bridge the gap?
I can suggest something here. So I think a lot of times we are very focused at, okay, this is the job description and this is what we need to exhibit during the interview, which is of course the right thing to do, right?
Right.
A lot of times people don't ask this question at the end of the interview. It's like, based on what you have heard from me so far, where do you think are the the alignments, and where do you think are the opportunities or the gaps, or is there anything that you need to hear from me to in order for you to be more confident to actually position me to the client, right? So sometimes it's less about what you say, but more about what you ask, right? And then from there, you might actually get some insights from the recruiter to say, hey, yeah, since you asked, actually,
good advice,
right? I was hoping to see this, but maybe I didn't quite see that just now, or you had said this, I had interpreted it this way. And then it provides you an avenue for you to either validate what you had said earlier or clarify, or then share another example or share an experience which will help to actually bridge that gap. So I think in short is asking the right questions.
Okay, I'm going to ask another question. This came out in earlier conversation, and that is, if I am pretty far down the line already, and I know that I'm not the only one being shortlisted. Of course, I'm not, because otherwise I would be receiving the offer. So would you be open if I were to ask you, can you tell me a little bit more about where I'm strong in compared to my competitor? I mean, yeah, would you? Jonathan,
yeah, I can answer that. Look, I get asked that a lot because
really?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm not shy to just share. Look, I mean, I know everyone here is probably on a different track, and my candidate pool tends to be those who are already in their jobs, but I attract them to the role, right? For various reasons. And of course, what's keeping them in the process, maybe they have chemistry with the hiring manager or whatever, they see the vision for the role, the mandate strategic, for example. But what is it that the other candidates bring? And usually there isn't any perfect candidate, right? And I would share, like, look, this person brings, let's say, they have done this initiative, right? It could be big, something strategic, for example, and they bring the strategic element, whereas you bring a very operational, safe pair of hands. So the client is very torn on what kind of profile do they need now. And then it really comes down to the soft skills. Sometimes we cannot decide on, what is it, the differences that are being made. So a lot of it then comes down to the chemistry. And that's where we go an extra step by doing like psychometrics and all that. There are certain things that tell us about you that doesn't come out in the interview. So I would say that, maybe this person is higher in when it comes to engaging his team members, or, versus yours, you may not be so strong in that. And this is where you are more strategic thinking. The person is a little bit, more tactical, for example. So at the end of the day, I'm not shy to just share with the candidates, look, obviously they have a decision to make between you and somebody else. And clients do, at the end of the day, they get uncomfortable if there's only one person in the process. I'll tell you a role that I actually knew someone was the perfect person for the CEO position, right?
Okay.
And I knew that, hey, this guy's going to be the placement. He's married to a Malaysian,
Right.
he's in Canada now, but he's been working in Africa, North America, Asia, right? Slam dunk, right?
Fit the bill.
Exactly. And then I still had to do a whole due diligence mapping for them to make sure they are comfortable, and they, okay, you're right, Jonathan, this person is the one, right? So, and the candidates know that it is a competitive process at the same time. So, I guess it's definitely okay to ask, and
It's okay to ask.
don't be afraid to ask one thing I do. Sometimes when I have to sign off someone, right, a sign off candidate, say, look, you've been in this process for a long time. Really, thank you for your time. I'm sure there's going to be other roles. Let's say you're not the preferred candidate. Always ask, what was it that I was lacking or missing that the other candidate brought that I couldn't? What was the deciding factor?
Yeah.
A good recruiter will try to tell you as much as possible, but of course, sometimes too brutal, honest feedback may not be the best, but at least the areas where you can work to develop further, I would say, to be more successful in the process, could be very, very small things. Could be the way that you sit, you stand, how firm your handshake is, you never.
So I mean, I have a slightly different take here, right? To be quite honest,
okay.
right? I mean, if you were to share, if you were to ask me before a decision is made on who else is in the process and what you're strong against the other, I usually try to keep it a bit more confidential, because I mean, like, I feel that it's just being respectful of people in the process, yourself included. So if somebody were to ask me about who else in the process, I wouldn't tell about your profile, your experience in that sense, right? However, of course, once a decision is made, I always make an effort to give feedback. Not brutal. I'll try to give constructive feedback without breaking your heart, right? So that's the way that I usually go about it, right? But I mean, there's really no right or wrong. I think and there is no harm in asking. What's the worst that can happen? You meet someone like me who says no. You meet someone like Jonathan who tells you, tells you about it, right?
He only says it now.
I only say it now, yeah. No.
Yeah. When you really ask him, oh, okay. Yeah. I think ask, right? You never know. You never know until you ask.
Yeah.
You never ask, you will definitely not know. For sure. Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Okay, I think we've got only 4 minutes left. I saw this question and I'm just wondering, Jonathan, did you actually give us a very quick run through of the process? I thought you did already.
I did. Yeah, it's the C-suite recruitment process tend to be longer because look, there's more stakeholders involved, right? Sometimes the board needs to get involved, C-suite. So it really, just to kind of boil it down, it's very similar to what Eugene mentioned, is a kickoff call. There's alignment on what is needed for the role. what is the cadence is going to be in terms of the timeline that we're going to be talking to the client. And we'll probably want to reach a short list within a month to 1.5 month time. Like, these are the guys that we want to put forward in the process. And then from there, if they go through the process of interviewing of everyone, having conversations, feedback. So typically, I think what's useful is to understand how long a executive search C-suite position lasts. It can be as quick as, 2 months, usually 2 months, I would say. A month would be very amazing, but usually you won't. I don't think that's typical. But up to three months I was considered quite fast already, and then up to 6 months, I would say. More than 6 months is very atypical, but it happens. Yeah, it happens.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah. All right, only 2 minutes left. I just want to ask each one of you, what are some of the irritating things that job seekers shouldn't do when they approach you, people that you don't know?
So like, I guess off-putting things, right? Off-putting things.
Off-putting ones, yeah. Something they shouldn't do.
When they're approaching me, when I think about off-putting things, the most off-putting thing is that, especially for me as being in-house, is that when candidates come to interview being unprepared. That to me is the biggest thing, right? I think if we've arranged for a time to speak, right, that I feel that it's a general respect for that, we're all giving time, and somebody coming to an interview process where they are not familiar with the organization, not familiar with that. Yeah, I think that to me is probably the most off-putting thing.
It's
as an in-house recruiter.
You have to repeat all the basic that can be read out there. We're wasting time.
I met some really extreme ones where they forgot even which company, right?
No.
Or like they completely missed the timing. So you call them and like, oh wait, are we supposed to pay at this time? And then and then you start to think, okay, this person is definitely not taking this process seriously.
Okay, but maybe to Jonathan, he likes that. Remember, he needs to lure. I don't know, Jonathan.
Yeah, that's true.
I'd say it is definitely your presentation, and some folks, especially when you're on the line, it's easy to get lost into talking about your experience and yourself, and you have so many things you want to share. So important to me is number one, before we get into that, focus on being articulate. Number one, when you're being asked something, really focus on what is being asked for and delivering that. And a good method I would tell people is break it down for someone. Okay, I asked you the question, the recruiter asked you, so tell me some achievements that really highlight your career. And I would guide them usually 2 or 3. And if the person goes along this and that and gives me 7, 8, 9, just try to fill it in. I said, okay, this is a quick one. I think a great thing is if you can make it compact. If you're asked a question, think, okay, number 1, this is what I did. Number 2, this is what how I solved it. And number 3, this is the how the business is impacted in a positive way. That's it. Then you pause. Let the consultant or the recruiter ask more questions in a sense. But what it shows is structure. You're articulate. You're listening. Sometimes a recruiter it cannot get everything, your whole life story in one go. So do allow for questions to be asked as well, is what I'm trying to say. I think that's one of the things, one of the tips that I would give to anybody who's looking for a job. It really makes an impact when you're very structured and you know how to articulate and you're concise in your answers. Yeah.
Actually, precision answering, right? Give your answer in the first statement, because attention span is always so short. Yeah.
Yes.
I really like that. Okay, so thanks for sharing both pet peeves. So what's one thing, maybe in closing, what parting advice can you share with our audience? Either one, Eugene or Jonathan.
Eugene, you want to go first? Yeah.
Well, I guess the parting advice is, if you're looking for a role, I know a lot of times we're thinking, hey, we obviously are trying to bring our best foot forward, and we want to show them our capabilities, right? But I think at the end of the day, of course, at the same time, it's for you to assess, right? So sometimes the way that organizations behave, react, gives you an insight to the organization, the culture, and that is for you to also assess. So I would say, don't give up, keep trying, right? Keep being innovative. Build up your LinkedIn so you get noticed, but at the same time also be discerning of your next roles as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks,
And
Eugene.
Jonathan?
Yeah, I think the key takeaway here is one, be find, people, recruiters want to find you. So have a LinkedIn, some have a digital footprint. It's easy. It's easy for us, update it regularly. So we know at least your career movements and what you're doing. That's one. Number two, I think, as I know everyone here is trying to upgrade their skills in some shape or form, find a next role, is also to be open to what is out there in the market, right? In your skill set. So for example, I think one thing I did want to mention during this call is one of the big things that is growing in popularity amongst employers is contract work. So, we have a stigma here as, Asians in Singapore. We want a full-time employment with all the benefits, the bells and whistles, right? We want that security, but employers are not sure about you yet. So if you say, I need to have that full-time job contract, it may shut a lot of doors for you. But because contract work is now, you can then spend a year here, there's a chance for extension. There's a chance for you to turn into a full-time role. It's about getting your foot in the door first, I think it's very important. So if you're someone who is open to contract work, you will put yourself heads above shoulders for a lot of other people who are not.
Wow.
That's another one I would say. Yeah.
That's
we have a
really
growing practice here now for that. Yeah.
Really? That is super encouraging for everyone here who's listening in. Yeah, this is really good to hear that you see that as a trend as well. And of course, in more established markets like the Americas and Europe, right, the gig workforce is already the norm. Yeah, and taking on contract work is the norm as well. But yes, indeed, here short-term assignments and all that is being frowned upon, I think, by the job seekers even. But it's really encouraging to hear that on the employer side, we are seeing more take-up rate on that. Yay. Short-term assignment, we do mean 12 months, right? It's in the range of like 12 months.
Yeah, usually it's in the range of 12 months. I'm not particularly so familiar in that sense, but I know it's a growing trend. The downside, of course, is the benefits, right? I mean, a lot of concerns is, am I going to get the coverage and the health? So, yeah, I think in general, that's something you need to assess and see what your risk appetite for. But, I think getting your foot in the door, showing that you are in the market, active with a chance to convert later on, I think that'll set yourself up nicely, rather than, a lot of people want to wait for that perfect job that comes along and that perfect fit. I say, don't wait for that perfect fit. Nothing is going to be perfect, in the get-go. Just get your foot in the door somewhere, learn new skills. And before you know it, the ball starts rolling. It's all a huge momentum effect. You can start getting calls, and before you know it, it's like, why won't recruiters return my call? Then you will be saying, oh, these recruiters, please leave me alone. We're going to get to that point very fast. So,
actually, I have this burning question. So I like just one. And Jonathan, in the initial part of the early part of my career, it's always recruiters chasing me. And then in the beginning, I kind of have this different attitude, like, oh yeah, sure, I'm such a wanted talent. But I think somewhere in midway, I had to change my mindset. I have to start competing for the role. Because I think as a recruiter, you would give up on me too, right? Because you will start to think, hey, wait, you are good, but you're not the best. You still need to fight for the role. Someone else is also equally good. So yeah, isn't it true? Wouldn't you give up if someone is too arrogant? Have you come across anyone who's too arrogant, in your search? Jonathan, have you?
Yeah, certainly. Okay. I mean, if you're talking about if the person is too arrogant, rebuffing all the time, saying no, then of course,
exactly.
Of course it's tough. But if it's for the right reasons, then it's understandable. Like, look, it's a good company that they're working for. They're getting a lot of experience, and they're choosing their moves very wisely. That's different, right? It shows a lot of discerning, and they want to make the right moves for them. I mean, one thing in the market here that employers really don't like, and I'm sure a lot of you here know, is jumpiness. And in Singapore, because also back to the very beginning of this conversation is, is there talent in the market? And there are, but there's some candidates have stayed in the job for a year or two, and it's like the last 5 years they had, let's say 4 to 5 different companies. That person has pretty much destroyed a lot of credibility they would have entering the market again, because they're just not seen as someone who is reliable, who is going to stay in the job to learn and to work at it. So I would then say, of course, no matter what you do, at least stay in a position for 2 years with the aim of doing more than that in the next position, right? Once you have a kind of a good idea what you want to do for the next 10 years, have a plan for the next 10 years of where you imagine yourself to be, and make wise moves that make sense and make you competitive in the market for the long term, make you interesting for recruiters to contact you, for sure. Too jumpy, we won't even give you a call. Yeah. So
sounds like that person needs a remedial plan for the branding. Yeah, for sure. Cool. Thank you again, Eugene and Jonathan, for your time. I'm sure, can everybody join me in giving them the reactions button?